Hi, everybody, and welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. And hey, I'm Adam, and I am pastor to believers and doubters, to unfaithful Christians and faithful atheists. And friends, Jesus was not afraid of questions, and neither are we here at One Question with Pastor Adam. And so each week, on Thursdays at about 11 Pacific, sometimes 12 Pacific, whenever we want to do the show is when we're going to do the show. So today we are at 12:15 Pacific. We sometimes we have some technical difficulties, and here we are on the live show. So welcome everybody. It's good to have you here. I am especially excited for this show today. Hey, Jose, good to see you. I'm excited for this show today because we're in need of some good news. And, it's been a rough couple of weeks here in the United States. And I know many people were like, we just had the 4th of July, and many of us didn't want to celebrate. What is there to celebrate about the United States these days? Well, I've got something for you. Are you ready for this? I've got something for you because today we have Seba O'Kiley, my witch friend. Isn't that awesome? I am a Christian pastor, and I have recently made friends with witches. And you know what I'm learning? I have probably been friends with witches for like most of my life, and I just didn't know it. But now I am discovering more witches are out there. They're like, I have witches in my congregation. And it opened my eyes to seeing how beautiful and awesome, lovely our witch friends are. And as I'm saying that, I know that there are probably some witches who are not so nice. Just like there are Christians who are not so nice. You may have run into a few of them, right? Okay. So anyway, I was on Seba is the Southern Fried Witch, and Seba has a website and also a podcast. And I was on her podcast 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I just had so much fun on the Southern Fried Witch podcast. And so Seba was like, if you want me to come on your show, I'd be glad to do that. And so today we are going to do kind of we're just going to get to know Seba and the spirituality of being a witch. And I'm going to bring Seba on. But friends, being a witch is dangerous in the United States, especially in the southern United States. You probably know why, because it's big Bible Belt. And so Seba is going to have on the live show a black screen. We're not going to show Seba because it's safer that way. So what we are going to do is bring Seba in. Hi, Seba.
Hey, how are you doing?
Great. I am so excited. I've been waiting like 3 weeks for this ever since we talked before. I am so excited to talk to you. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
I had such a great time, and we are bringing on Seba's artwork on your website, which is Southern Fried Witch. See, I've got it right here, southernfriedwitch.com, where you've got your blog and you've got your podcast and all other kinds of information about who you are and what you are up to. And so I just love that artwork that you have there.
Actually, I saw it on a site and I thought I loved it. It was everything that I felt that I wanted to put out there in the world. A little humor, but something also very bright and sunny. And I talked to the artist and she sold me the painting and the copyrights, but I still give her credit on my website.
I love it. It's fantastic. So I'm so glad that we get to use it. And we've got some folks in the comment section. And friends, if you have comments or questions that you want to throw in here, feel free to put those in the comment section and we'll bring them in. Lydia says, I'm so glad you two are having another conversation. I am too, Lydia.
Yeah.
Lydia says, "I loved, loved, loved." That's. I did too. I did too. Seba's podcast episode. It was so much fun for me. So, thank you again for being here. I kind of wanted to just kind of set up this conversation. As I said earlier, I started having witches come to my church, and I was like, this is new. And I had conversations with them about witchcraft and being a Christian witch, and what it kind of meant to them. Uh, and I'm just like so curious about what it means to you, because I wanted to like say, what does being a witch mean? And that's kind of like as silly as saying, what does being a Christian mean? Because it means different things to all of us. And so, what I wanted to ask you about your path. What led you to become a witch, and what does being a witch mean to you?
I would also like to start with one of the most agreed upon definitions of a witch would be a person who affects change.
Mm,
We believe that we have that kind of interactional power. So there's one thing that I think we all could pretty much agree with. But for me, I grew up down here in Alabama, and witchcraft was all around. Um, we have a lot of influences from other cultures down here, and it's a very haunted, feel to it. And there was witchcraft everywhere. It just was never spoken out loud. Quite honestly, one of the first places I was introduced to it was on a farm. The belief in a certain stomp or a certain walk could bring in rain or bless a cornfield with certain pieces of glass and things like that, and certain chants. You know, um, I grew up right there at the beginning of the Trail of Tears, and I have Cherokee ancestry. So a lot of that informed my life and my path right from the very beginning. I don't really know how to say how I started being a witch, because I feel as if, like many of us do, that I was born this way.
mm, wow.
That I was born this way. The deep connection I have with plants and trees and animals, and the deep empathy I feel, and I it's sort of in my blood, possibly also in my bloodline, but I was born this way. A lot of witches I know, trained to be a certain way, and I've even, of course, done a lot of research and a lot of training in my own life, but being a witch inevitably to me is something that you already feel in your heart. It's like a calling, Pastor Adam.
Mm,
It's like a calling, and I know you know what that is.
yeah.
A calling from, the Great Mother, a calling from Mother Nature, and gets in our bones very early and is hard to fight. And to not be a witch would mean for me to die
Mm.
spiritually. For me to convert would mean for me to feel like I was dying. That's how important it is to me. I don't know if I walked off the path there with your question.
No, not at all. Um, what is the spirituality of nature, you're
Yeah.
that you're speaking to? It's beautiful for me, and I wish that my tradition would take nature, creation, whatever you call it, much more seriously. And we have a lot to learn from the ways that you talk about nature, in caring for the world. Tragically, Christianity has become known for not caring for the world.
Mhm.
And so, what is it within the which tradition, which spirituality that connects you so closely to nature?
I think I would first have to back off and say that it's really a pagan sensibility.
Mm,
Um, you know, you can be a pagan and not consider yourself to be a witch, or, but most witches do consider themselves to be pagan.
mm,
And that care for the earth, For me, and I think it's always best to say, "For me,"
Mhm.
instead of trying to make a grand statement of which is everywhere. Hey, Raylene, hi. Sorry, I've come to know Raylene.
That's
And that would be that God, as you call it, well, you also call it goddess. Um, I've known people that just call it the force.
yes.
But for lack of a better way to put it, and in a way that's more relatable to anyone listening, God is in nature.
Mm,
The wisdom, the love, the growth, the mystery, everything, sustenance, healing, all of it, even death, which can be quite beautiful in nature. It's all there. Uh, that's church for me.
mm.
I learned so much more. You know, when people come to me and they say, "What does it mean to be a witch?" What would be the first thing I might try?
Yeah.
And this could be for anyone, though. It doesn't matter what your spirituality is. I tell them, grow something, even if it's, chives in a windowsill, dandelions. Grow something from seed, though. That's so critical. From that moment, watching it erupt with all that memory and becoming this living, beautiful thing that can feed us or feed the bees or feed the deer or heal us through medicine and watch it go back to seed. It is the most, I'm getting chills on my arms
Mm,
now because it is the most miraculous proof of something outside of ourselves I've ever known. And you have to experience it yourself through those processes to really get it.
mm. I love it.
I don't know that I've fully answered the question. Take me anywhere you want on this
No, that's
route.
great. I mean, you are able to see would you say that you're able to witness the divine that is within us and beyond us, within nature, within the plants that you're growing, and seeing the divine grow within all of that is a way of honoring the thing that's bigger than ourselves.
I'd say it's more important than seeing. And yes, it is the divine. I think
Yeah.
it's taking part because
Mm,
for me as a witch, it
mm,
is not enough to observe. It is not enough to separate myself from the natural world. I think the most beautiful thing about being what I am is that I understand myself as part of the cycle,
yeah.
part of it. I am a shepherd in a lot of ways of all these beautiful plants I grow. You know, I have a farm, and and I'm honored to be able to tend them. I'm honored
Mm,
because I know that they tend me back. And yeah, it's the divine. What else could it possibly be? You know, for all the silliness that we hear about new age things, witchcraft is not necessarily new age at all. In fact, it's quite old. Um, just the idea that if you sing to a plant, it responds and it grows better,
mm,
and all of the things they're learning about trees and how they communicate with each other and how they take care of their young. I forget how many miles away, up to
mm.
10 miles away, something beautiful like that. There's a language that we are not tapping into when all we do is sit and observe in a pretty little, you know, I guess, magazine cover or a nice tour somewhere. To actually engage and make yourself part of that cycle necessarily means that we find ourselves protecting that cycle and the earth and all the beautiful, flora and fauna and animals and insects. Suddenly we care more because we see how we are part of it, not outside of it.
I love it. In my tradition, there's this passage in scripture where it says that God or the divine is that in which we live and move and have our being. It's this like this the spirit, the goddess, as you and I like to call it, whatever we like to call it, is bigger than ourselves, and it's here, it's present, within it's within creation, and we can participate in it, and hopefully we do, to make it better, right? To participate with it in the growing of creation. So I mean, the more that I talk with you, the more I see such beautiful resonances that I'm feeling inside of myself. And so thank you for being here. And also, we've got
Yeah.
some comments here. Um, Guistina, hopefully hope I'm saying that right, says perfectly said. So Lisa says that this is so relatable, and oh wow to your comments. So we're all picking up what you're putting down, and so thank you for that. You mentioned like some history of witchcraft. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that?
Oh
Because
my
I've
goodness.
heard like all kinds of different things, and that I recognize that's a bit like asking somebody to say, "Give me like the history of Christianity," and that's not fair. And so, but go ahead, give us the history, some history of like which, like I know that like you are rooted in Alabama, in southern
Yes.
United States,
Yes.
and there's all kinds of witchcraft in Europe and in Africa and all over the world. Um, and so maybe just give us whatever like that history means to you, or where you find the importance of that history.
You're right, and how broad of a question it is. I think the best I could do is to say that we have always been here.
Hmm.
I mean, from a little town witch that would do healing potions and poultices and teas to, the Greeks and most Native American cultures had something like it. Of course, not the word witch necessarily, which was sometimes considered to be something more dark, but they did believe in magical processes and magical use of herbs and medicine people. It literally is a foundation of all cultures somewhere that there was someone there, that would be a healer maybe, or a magi, or someone who would try to be able to understand what the illnesses were in people's souls. I mean, it just what it means to me is I am both Cherokee and Celtic,
Mm,
and I marry those traditions, but I'm very, grounded in my own geography. I believe that magic is science and science is magic,
mm,
just not, necessarily proven yet, and I also personally believe as a witch that my magic works best, ground up rather than top down. So where I live, what the energies are here, what the plants are here, what the ancestral history is here, all informs my craft. So for me to be able to speak about another witchcraft in another land would almost be cultural appropriation.
mm, mm,
So I don't know that I would consider doing that. And I do believe in a great mother goddess. I do worship God as a goddess, as God as a woman, I suppose. But that's for lack of deeper, mysterious understanding. We have to assign, I believe we have to assign these things in our head to be able to envision who we love and who we worship and what our spirituality is. But personally, I believe that, once upon a time, God was a woman.
mm.
They found evidence of that
Yeah.
30,000 years ago in caves. And I just believe she shows her face to different cultures differently in ways that they can understand because God would never want someone to not understand. They would I believe that the divine would want to show up in a way that would not frighten us and would look more like us and has many faces, but one beating beautiful heart.
The great mama. I love
The
it.
great mama, that's what
Great
I call
mama.
her.
Let's go. Let's go. Justina, thank you. Thank you, Justina. And I wanna ask, like you've mentioned magic a couple of times. What what does magic mean to you? What does that phrase? What does that word mean?
Well, that could take us down a lot of avenues, Adam. Sometimes my magic is like a prayer, and I know you know what a prayer is.
I've done that a couple times. Yeah.
Right. It's just that in mine, I might incorporate a special packet of herbs, a
Mm,
sweet little song, a candle may be lit.
okay.
My great mother is with me, and these are the ways I'm connecting through nature and the tactile experience of it. Um, and in a lot of ways, that's what it is. But to me, I do believe that we have energy. I believe that we can share that energy. And you're right. It can be, oh, I hate using binary terms like good and evil, but not so great, or even extraordinarily hurtful. Um, but I also believe it can be wonderful. And honestly, the persecution of witches did not arise until, well,
Yeah.
the faith
Yeah.
that there was, that kind of went hand in hand. But there's really no need in all that
Mm,
because what we are doing is a lot like prayer,
yeah. Yeah.
a lot like prayer.
It is a major part of Christian history that tragically is still with us today, as you have experienced, which is why we
Yes.
are keeping your screen black. And the witch hunts were in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, and they shouldn't be here today. And so I am just so grateful to get to know witches like you, and I know that the world needs more witches like you. And you are a beautiful human being, and I'm so grateful for you and our friendship. Lisa says, when you said to not be a witch would feel like dying, it
Mhm.
really drove that home. It really drove that home for me. Imagine telling someone their way or meaning of life is wrong and making them feel like dying. I also struggle with the Christianity, our ancestors and traditions of our Christianity, because our natural remedies and healing rituals could easily be seen as witchcraft. um, I think Lisa, that's a really great way of putting it. Um, I think that especially in Judaism, there have always been Jewish witches
Mhm.
doing this kind of witchcraft. You can even find witchcraft in the Bible, including in Numbers, where there's a potion for an abortion. That feels like that's witchcraft to me. It might be by a different name, but that's there. There are also like other kinds of things within Jewish and Christian tradition that look a lot like the witchcraft that Lisa is getting at. We just share so much in common when it comes to these things. Um, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or.
Yes, I think, is it Liza? Liza.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely loved that she picked up on that because those things are really the idea that your natural remedies and healing rituals from your ancestors, possibly your culture as well, could be, for lack of a better way to put it, demonized.
Mm,
Um, Demonizes a lot of connective tissue that you have to your identity and who you are. And I can't imagine a God that would want you to feel that way. Um, yeah, that's absolutely what it's like. It all ties back into dogma. One of the reasons that I hear a lot of people turning to witchcraft, and as you know, I've sent some of them to you,
mm,
Pastor Adam, because I felt that they needed to nurture the remnants of their Christianity, and I thought you could help. But one of the reasons is because they're looking for more autonomy in their spirituality, more individuality. They wanted to feel it for themselves rather than to be told how to practice it and how to feel it and experience it. Um, Dogma really, I've felt this way for so long. It's a spirituality killer. if we're not going to be open-minded, as you are being, Pastor Adam, with your one question that you're doing every week, yeah, I think we're closing off the spiritual experience. Go ahead.
Is there dogma within the spirituality of witchcraft? Is there like you're doing it right and you're doing it wrong kind of rules that get into even witchcraft?
Oh, we do have our infighting.
Yeah.
We have so many different, I don't know whether or not to call them sects
Mm.
or, paths, but we have so many different ways of understanding witchcraft. I mean, there's Wicca, and it can be family Wicca, it can be Gardnerian Wicca, it could be Dianic. There's a Satru, there's so many different hoodoo, voodoo, there's so many different veins. So that usually comes with a more coven experience. Um,
I'm,
and a coven, of course, is, three or more witches gathered together.
I am like way at zero on my knowledge of all of this. So you
Sorry.
are like throwing out terms that I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. Like, what are these terms that you are talking
Mhm.
about? Like you've just explained a coven. So where three or more are gathered, that's a
Well, that's the
coven.
way I understand
Okay.
it. The witchcraft world is so insistent on autonomy that you could have, I mean, most of us do understand it that way, but you can have so many different ideas. It allows for that much. I just recently spoke on this and I want to bring it back up. I saw Gloria Steinem in 2014. This
Mm,
is related. At a local university, and I had a unique opportunity to speak to her. And I remember everyone, before I spoke privately with her in the audience, very prim and proper one. Even, the more liberal of them, very prim and proper. And someone raised their hand and asked if the women's movement was still even valid.
mm,
And if it was, what should we do? What could we do to assure women's rights? And Gloria answered very simply. She said, start a coven.
mm,
And the whole audience was just frozen. This is in the Bible Belt. And she said, because, together you can do more than you can do by yourself. And I understood what she was saying. But a coven, it can be a wonderful place. It's almost like a gathering, a fellowship, and which is often need community too. And so like-minded ones who agree upon a certain ethos would gather together and do witchcraft together. And it's not necessarily terrifying.
mm. Yeah.
It could be quite sweet, the healing that they do. I know a lot of Christians who will come to a witch when everything else is broken and say, "Can you do that little thing you do? I really need extra help right now."
I love it. We uh I don't know about your covens, but in our church we sometimes have conflicts.
Yeah.
And one of the witch members of the church said that she could cast a spell around our church for protection.
Yes.
And I said, yes, please do that.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
she walked around the church and did her thing, and I said I stayed away from it, and mostly because I just wanted her to have the experience that she was going to have without me getting in the way. And
Yeah.
when she was done, she came back and said, "Okay, I'm done." And I said, "Thank you, thank you." So I'm like, the more of this kind of spirituality that we can put in the world, the better off we're going to be. Um,
It's always occurred to me that people often demonize something that they don't understand. But if your faith is real and if you're on a good foundation, what would possibly shake that?
right. Yes, absolutely. Amen. Amen. Heather says, I am a solitary practitioner. I'm glad you brought up rules because I feel outside of covens, especially where I live. Heather also lives in the South. Have you found it hard to create covens where you live?
Okay, well, I only have one, and we are only 5 in number, and we are 12 years old, and we are closed. And the reason is because we wanted to work closely with each other, and we are all family related.
Mm,
So it's a bit more of a family tradition. Um, there is a small community around here. There always will be. They pagans exist everywhere, and the witches that create covens are everywhere. I do believe it is a little harder. I believe it's a little harder because it's hard to find them.
mm,
It's not like there's
yeah.
gonna be an ad in the paper or a commercial on the television. Um, witchcraft has always been secretive in some ways. Even in the safer places to live, a lot of it is secretive. Um, but I think that's what kinda makes it so magical
Mm,
because it's
mm,
so privately felt. It is so, singularly, experienced within the soul that it's hard to we call it the great mysteries. It's hard to put it in someone else's head that this is what it feels like. Um, so I really can't speak. I can speak to what she says that it is, often the case that people want to be solitary now. I'm finding that more and more. On a poll that I did for my own podcast, I found out that 80% of my listeners are solitary.
mm,
And that could be because I'm always talking about the dangers of dogma. But solitary just means that that is the way you practice. It does not necessarily mean that you do not have community or friends that are like minded. We get together for holidays. We celebrate the solstice, and we share food and drums around a fire and laugh. And there's still community. It's just significantly difficult in the South.
Are you finding it? I mean, you have a great online community.
Oh, yes.
Are you finding the online space to be a good place to build this a coven? Can you do a coven in the online space?
Well, one could,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I personally would rather work with, I'm the teacher of my
Yeah.
coven, so I personally would rather work with a student close to me, but if you'd asked me that question 7 years ago, I would have said, "Absolutely not."
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
But through COVID and so many of our experiences, I have found the dearest friends
Mm,
online,
yeah.
including yourself.
Mhm.
And I believe that it could be done.
Yeah. That's awesome. Amen.
Yeah.
As Raylene says, amen. So, friends, if you have comments or questions that you'd like to bring in, you can put those in the chat section. Um, is this is total ignorance? Me being total.
Good. I love those questions.
I uh, I love the freedom that you are talking about when it comes to witchcraft, uh, and I don't know if that's a word that you would use for it, but and the dogma that gets like really that can get really dangerous and oppressive. Um, are there are there like I don't know, like it, is it kind of a free for all when it comes to spirituality in the witchcraft tradition? Is it are there like as Heather said, are there like rules or is it basically there's a tradition but you're kind of making it your own and not making it up as you go, but kind of making it your own as you go?
That again is a very broad question, but I think I can pull a few things out for you. And I think the first thing I would say is I was asked one time, I was at a pagan pride day, and I was accosted by a church. Several men from the church circled myself and two of my friends. And they kept asking, how do we know, what keeps us in line? What keeps us in line? Uh, Are, are we not held to any precepts?
Mm,
I think it is a horrible misconception to believe that, I mean, I would speak for my atheist friends here, that we need a religious, and I'm saying that word on purpose, not
Mhm.
spiritual, a
Mhm.
religious code
Yes.
to have ethics.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just do not buy into that. I understand the need to do that if you're going to do religion on a large scale, and that can get political.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, no harm, no foul, but it has had a lot of harm and foul.
Yeah.
So I cannot speak for all traditions in the craft because there are so many. For instance, Gardnerian Wicca have their precepts. I don't know that I call them rules, but precepts of engagement. I have my own. I think you would be
Mm.
stunned to find that they are don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't hurt
Okay.
anyone,
Heard those before. Yeah, those are good.
no murder.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
it's almost shocking that
Yeah.
I would have that moral code. Um, and I'm surrounded by like-minded witches. We do believe that energy out, energy in, which means that at least my coven does, what we put out can come back upon us fairly hard. And so therefore, whatever we put out probably needs to be a good thing
Mm. Mm.
as much as possible. We do believe in autonomy, and that is the word I would use. Um, we don't hold each other to anything in my group. We believe in autonomy because as a woman's body is her body,
Yeah.
for instance,
Yep.
so is one's soul to decide where it goes.
Mm.
And then we believe that very intensely, that you can't police a soul. It's up to the individual in our cases. Usually we don't get a lot of intercession. We are held accountable immediately. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No,
Are there
absolutely.
rules? Yes, but they tend to be self-imposed.
Okay. Okay. Are there like
It's scary, huh?
I'm fascinated, and we're getting a lot of comments like this is fascinating. And I'm just I'm it, so there are self-imposed rules.
Well, there tend to be, yes. Mhm.
They tend to be. So, like in my tradition, you would look to something like maybe the Bible, or like I'm in the United Church of Christ, and we've got a tradition of tragically, well, not as much in our case, but it tends to be old white dudes who have told us how to think about these things. um, and we're doing much better these days, fortunately. But is there like a general code book? Like if somebody were to be like, I guess here's what I'm asking.
Okay.
If somebody were to be like, I love what Seba is talking about. This is fantastic. Uh, where should I go to learn more? You should go to
Oh, boy.
southernpridewitch.com and learn more there. But like,
Well, if you wouldn't mind me doing a shout out, then I would say that because there are so many different fashion, what's the word here? Types of witches.
yeah.
Where to go to learn more podcast, That Witch Life podcast, are not a particular path based podcast, and they talk about all things witchcraft. There's so many wonderful things to learn, including the history. Um, things like divination, they could learn a lot of things from there. They do a lot more exploratory teaching on that podcast. I think I do a lot of reflection,
Mhm.
interior reflection and storytelling, but there are good books. I wrote my dissertation on, on the Great Mother Goddess. I got away with that. And yeah, there's a lot of wonderful books. When God Was a Woman. One of my favorite authors in paganism, witchcraft specifically, is Carol P. Christ.
Mm.
The irony there is
Uh-huh.
beautiful. I really love being able to say in my dissertation, Christ says
Yeah, that's fantastic.
that God is a woman. Um, and that's a good one. Wiccan, I know of many Wiccan delightful friends of mine. I am not Wiccan, but I know of them, and they sometimes and sometimes do not subscribe by the Reed, REDE, the Wiccan Reed. And of course, there was Gerald Gardner, who had a lot to write about as well, and Scott Cunningham, if you're interested in all things Wiccan. But I'm not a Wiccan scholar, and I would hate to go any further in this direction. I could really step on some toes, y'all, and I don't want to do that.
Okay. Okay.
I don't want to do that at all. But I would listen to some very nice podcasts out there and do some learning. And you're right, we're not all the same. I
Yeah.
see. What is this?
We've got a lot of comments here.
Oh,
Lynn says I've been practicing Christo pagan for 20 years. I know there's a lot of controversy in Wiccan and pagan circles around Christo pagan, but Lynn has found that to be I know, and a lot of folks that I interact with have found that to be a deep spiritual path to take, which is awesome. I'm gonna read this question in a little bit, but you'd mentioned your dissertation on the Great Mother. Is that? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the Great Mother?
I can tell you a little bit about, I can tell you about that, but I can't go any further on the dissertation because it was published under my real name.
Okay. Yeah.
But the Great Mother, sure. I did years and years and years of study. As a child, I went through quite the trauma. I'm going to be very careful with that. Quite the trauma. And it was at the hands of the Christian white patriarchy in the Deep South. I remember the first time that it occurred to me that I didn't have to kneel to a man. I would have never been spiritual if I had not had that option. For me, it was critical. And then I found this great body of work on how all these other cultures and all these wonderful lands, or all the way back to 32,000 years ago, worshipped a great mother, the Venus of Willendorf, and all these other wonderful images. And it opened up the door for me. It just, we have trouble when we genderize things too heavily, where we don't allow for fluidity. And I think that is one of the biggest and probably the most scary conversations anyone can have, is when we consider that the divine may argue with our genderizing. But I needed to see it. I needed to see her. I needed to see that. That's what would heal me. And but yeah, I would definitely check out those books I told you about. There's a great body of knowledge out there. Regretfully, the rise of Christianity necessarily meant the demise of goddess worship and all things. For instance, before, the image of the goddess could be both maternal and even have to go to battle for her people. I always like to say she could be malevolent or benevolent. It depended on if you're hurting her people or, she was less fractured. She was less sanitized. And then, and the rise of Christianity, a lot of that was dressed over. I know a lot of people say dressed down. No, dressed over. Things laid on top of her where, no more sexuality. We have to just understand this as a pure maiden in the sky. She was either that or a monster, or a worse word I will not say.
Yeah.
And I think that still prevails. You wanted to know about the history of witchcraft, and I would say go look at the history of midwifery, because they would often be tied together and were chased down and treated horribly and subverted by Christianity, because they couldn't be under the control of a patriarchal system. So that's a lot of what I wrote about.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I went
No,
on.
it's great. That's perfect. Lynn says there's a new book I love called Jesus, the Ultimate Shaman. So that sounds
Nice.
like fun. I'm reminded of when Jesus compares himself to a mother hen protecting
Mhm.
her chicks, right? So the mother image is in there.
I would also add that Jesus the Magician is a wonderful book.
I should get that one. My favorite bit of magic is when Jesus turns water into wine, and keeps the party going. So
I'm a big fan of that.
that's a good one. That's my favorite miracle slash magic.
Mm,
Liza says again, uh, with that we had mentioned how there's a lot of these practices that could be viewed as witchcraft mentioned throughout the Bible. Where do you
mhm.
stand when it comes to openly practicing these rituals or being a witch and still openly being a Christian? I guess I
That
don't know
sounds
what
like it's for you.
that's a me question. Yeah. Well, I speaking. She continues speaking more to how legalistic most Christians can be. Do you believe that as long as we put God or the source first, that it's not wrong and it shouldn't be demonized? Or how do we hold space for our friends and family and others? I am against demonizing in general. You, Seba, are helping me answer this question because earlier you mentioned magi when you were talking about how this has been seen throughout world history,
Yes.
and it's in Matthew chapter. What chapter is it? 3, where or was it? I don't know. Anyway, in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, it's the magi who come from the east following a star. This is astrology here, people, right? And these are magi known as magicians. They often get, we talked about this on your show, they often get translated as wise men.
Mhm,
And that was a move to go against what they were actually were, which was magicians. They were magi. They were witches of the ancient world, and they were led by the great mother or God or the divine or whatever, in my tradition, to find more of God in the world.
mhm.
And so when we're talking about magic and magicians and stuff, it's right there. And there are tragically other passages in the Bible that are horrible, and we don't follow them anymore, including passages on slavery. And there are also passages that are highly debated as to whether they're talking about witches or something else. Um, People who use there's an idea that these were folks who were poisoning people with potions and stuff, and they were like, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. And so there's just a lot of controversy if you look into those passages. But when it comes to witchcraft in the Bible, you can see it in many different places, including the Magi, who use a form of witchcraft. I don't know if we would say astrology is a form of witchcraft. I don't know. I'm ignorant. But
Then we all are.
right? I mean, but these are things that Christians have tended to say, don't do astrology. Well, there it is, right there
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
beginning of the story, where astrology, astronomers, astrologists, people who follow the stars, find God, more of God in the world.
See, this feels more like a conversation that makes me wanna say, there it is again, where we're being divorced from the natural world. The stars are a part of the natural world. All of this, separation from nature doesn't feel godly to me.
Yes.
I in fact, as I've stated, that's the only place I find
Mm,
her, him for people who would
sure.
want to gender that way. And I can't imagine what looking to the stars, why that would be evil if we all understand them as also created divinely. Eh, Demonizing anything, come on, we all believe that there is evil out
Mm,
there in the world. There's enough of that on its own. We don't have to point to
Man.
a statue of Isis and say, "There it is.
Yes. Yes.
I found it. I now have evil," because evil, just like the sacred, is almost impossible to hold in your hand. Um, it's slippery like that,
Yes.
but the sacred is something that we have to experience, in a very moving way. We can't hold that either. I
Perfect.
guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes I think we imagine evil where it doesn't exist and miss it where it does.
Mm. Mm. I love it. That's perfect. Yeah. Heather says, do you know Drawing Down the Moon? Would you
Y
recommend Drawing Down the Moon?
Yes, I certainly would. I think it's beautiful. It is Wiccan in nature,
Okay.
and Wiccans are wonderful, wonderful people. And, yeah, you regardless if you're like me, even if you were a witch that was not, say, Gardnerian or, a Dianic, you could still learn from another path. I know I learn from Pastor Adam all the time.
What is
So,
can you say what Gardnerian and the other term is?
oh, I really wish I didn't have to define
No.
them.
Okay. No. No. Don't do it then. We'll scratch the last
I'm
5
afraid I
seconds
will
of this
step
episode.
on toes,
That's
but,
okay. You're just like opening my world up to all kinds of new things, and I'm just so
I
curious. I
would say
love it.
that a friend of mine, Zuzana Budapest, you could look her up
Okay.
and learn a lot about Dianic, and then also, Gerald, Gardner, but not necessarily only him. There's the fairy faith, and
Okay.
there's, I think, different sections of that, and, and it is way more, embedded in olden ways and Celtic cultures than you would ever believe, and has less to do with Walt Disney fairies than you would think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love learning from different traditions. I
Uh,
believe I can find God everywhere.
I love it. I love it. And
Mm.
I think that is an excellent phrase. I think I can find God everywhere to end our conversation on this. This was fantastic. And thank you so much, Seba, for being here. Loved the conversation as always. And friends, if you loved this conversation, go check out Seba's website, Southern Fried. Can you tell us a bit about your website
Yeah,
name?
the
Yes.
southernfriedwitch.com.
Yes.
Where did I get it from?
Yeah.
Or well, honey, I'm a wonderful cook. I've been cooking since I was a tiny little girl, and I'm also a kitchen witch, which means that I grow my food, and I believe that I can create magic through food, that if I put the love and intent into that process, I sing, I dance in the kitchen.
Mm.
I have, beautiful little herbs hanging everywhere, and I believe that I can spin magic into a chocolate pie like nobody's business.
Oh, oh. I I someday I need to come get some magic chocolate pie. That
Yes,
sounds
yes.
amazing.
Well, I do have a book coming up, and I will be traveling your way,
Oh,
so
fantastic. Awesome, awesome. Well,
yeah,
I
yeah.
would love that. That would be so good, so good. And, thank you, everybody. Check out Seba's
Thanks, y'all.
podcast, Southern Fried Witch, and, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Jeff says, "Please open a restaurant." We are all
Yes,
about
sir.
the witch restaurant right now, so that sounds amazing. So,
Well,
thank you everybody for being here, and go check out Southern Fried Witch. And everybody, hope you have a great rest of your day. We will do this. Actually, I'm going to be gone next week because I'm going to be in Northern Ireland. Actually, I am going to a peace conference there, so a peace and conflict resolution conference. So I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. So keep your eye out for the next episode of One Question with Pastor Adam. And until next time, may the goddess, the mother goddess, be with you, friends. Have a
blessed be y'all.
blessed be, blessed be. Take care, everybody. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.